Something is afoot. Something is afoot right now. A different story is being shaped and shared either underneath us or beyond us or all around us or all three. This spring, as a family, we have recently discovered geocaching. Geocaching, if you don't know, it is a special map you have to acquire. Well, now it's an app. And it offers clues and hints, leading you traversing amongst the streets, neighborhood parks, and urban areas towards a little tiny treasure box. This is no simulation or video game. This is real. I'm talking about a real treasure box. Within the tiny capsule is a tiny scroll upon which you get to unfurl and write your name and the date when you discovered it. Has anyone ever done geocaching? Okay, yes, Denver has. Awesome. Okay. I would like for UUCA to become a geocache Denver. You'd like to discuss it, see me after the service. All right, so within this, okay, so you write your name down and the date that you discovered it. Now, together, I hope you saw when Denver shot up his hand, this experience is a glorious, epic moment of shared discovery and aha! Now, I had heard of geocaching, but now that we have started really doing it, the effect is somewhat mind-blowing. My kids cannot get over their excitement. I mean, they're saying there is an entire world within the larger world, and it's full of treasures, and it is right beneath our noses, but it is incredibly difficult to see. In fact, if you're not looking for it, you'll never see it. It's everywhere. And it makes you wonder what other kinds of treasures are all around you that you might be missing. Now, if you have been following church attendance and membership statistics, as I'm sure most of you do on the regular, you may have heard that the beginning of the 21st century saw a slow and steady decline in American mainline Protestantism. And Unitarian Universalism as well. Now, there was that famous Pew Research poll that rocked my particular world of clergy and church leaders, naming a seismic shift of American life away from church membership and towards not necessarily other civic groups nor other clubs, but just nothing. Nothing replacing the role of the congregation in people's lives, but something is afoot. Religious historian Phyllis Tickle, what a name, contends that every 500 years, the Judeo-Christian, and she suggests the Muslim faith also, so all the Abrahamic traditions, go through a transformation and a resurgence. Tickle believes that we are now at the beginning of a great emergence in faith, in religion, and its place in American life. Our 500 years are up. First of all, when the term great is applied to a religious moment, mostly it signifies a religious understanding that is applying to more than just the bishops. So the people are actually noticing, and it is affecting their lives beyond sort of the fathers of the church. We're thinking about the Great Reformation, the Great Schism, and so on. When Christians despair of the upheavals and reformations that have been the history of the faith, when the faithful resist, as so many do just now, the presence of another time of reconfiguration with its inevitable pain, we would all do well to remember that, she writes. Not only are we in the hinge of a 500-year period, but we are also the direct product of one that came 500 years before. It is important to remember that no standing form of organized faith has ever been destroyed by one of our semi-millennial interruptions and eruptions. Instead, each simply has lost hegemony or pride of place, power, to the new and not yet organized form that was birthing. She likens it to like a great religious rummage sale. So what is birthing? What I'm seeing is a newfound freedom to develop a praxis, a liturgy, and a theological richness that are today ever more fascination and interest to the people, the rest of the church. And then the church begins to weave a new story of itself. And this is where preaching comes in, I think. As we tell the story of our time, we also shape that story in real time. So the narratives we choose to share matter. So here's how I see it. And get ready, I'm going to be merging a lot of ancient church history because I'm not a historian, I am a storyteller. The emperor, Nero, Caligula, Caesar, propped up, funded, and supported by a ruling class of uber-wealthy landowners and enslavers, exploiters and oppressors, declares himself to be a god among men. His supporters claim that the head of state should also be the head of the church, and he should decide what is moral and ethical for society. He commits crimes out in the open, daring any of his cohort to upset the order of his authoritarian oligarchic empire, spending most of his personal time enveloped in fits of paranoid, small-minded rage at his perceived enemies. He offers images of himself as a healer, as either a god or chosen by God, whichever. These images are scrawled upon tablets or scrolls. They are shared amongst the populace. He uses a scripted set of few words on repeat to underscore and secure his power in the hopes that no one will question it. He sits on golden thrones. In a golden room, he creates monuments to himself and cannot tolerate disagreement nor disloyalty. Does this sound familiar? Talking about 2,000 years ago, don't worry. Some of the people who had been enslaved, well, they begin an uprising. They coalesce around one man. So it is written. I wonder if it was more than one. Jesus of Nazareth, who travels the land among the oppressed, sharing ideas that uplift the poor, that question the empirical ruling class. He counteracts the claims of the emperor as chosen by God by demonstrating his own acts of healing, which, just to bring it back to lay ministry, are most often achieved by just believing the claims of the afflicted and acknowledging their pain. If you read of some of the healing acts of Jesus of Nazareth, often he was just affirming, yes, you are afflicted, and yes, you can be healed, and then they are. That's pastoral care. That's lay ministry. The people who share his message, they meet in clandestine ways in their homes, just around their dinner tables, inviting neighbors, the poor, the sick, even the tax collectors to sit with them and hear about this new possible reality beyond empire, beyond the oligarchy. They say prayers to a different God who is not their oppressor, but a God to the oppressed. They are impoverished. They are terrified. They have been enslaved, yes, but they are beginning to hope for a better future. Now, if only some of these folks wrote down a guidebook for resisting oppression for dummies. No, wait. They did write a book. I think it was called Chicken Soup for the Desperate Soul. No. It was like the seminal text for how to survive an evil dictator. It was, no, maybe not the seminal text, like the definitive text. What's the word for that? The Bible. The Bible. It was a book of the people. And so the stories then were redacted across time. They were changed and updated according to the political whims of the church fathers of later centuries. But there really is no traditional way to read the Bible. There is no natural or typical or regular lens to bring to this ancient tome. There is only your lens. This is what they teach you in seminary. There is only your lens, the one you bring, with your cultural references, your religious wounds, your philosophies, and your ideological loyalties. Now, I read this text for the very first time with a lens of liberation, honoring what my theology professor, Dr. James Cone, said, which is that God takes a side, and God sides with the oppressed and not the oppressor. Now, when someone emerges from a near-death experience, they speak of a new focus, of clarity, a new clarity of what is truly vital, what is most important. And this week, it became even more clear that American democracy is experiencing a near death. And we pray, not a complete death over the next 3 years. The New York Times said that with its decision this week in Louisiana versus Calais, the Supreme Court gutted a core part of the Voting Rights Act, that is Congress's landmark prohibition on voting rules that have the effect of excluding people of color from the political process. In doing so, the court has, not for the first time, claimed an authority to reject laws passed by Congress in service of equal justice and a free society. This ruling has effectively killed the Second Reconstruction, the mid-20th century civil rights revolution. And in the face of this decision, Congress must once again defend democracy from a hostile and partisan court. And we hope that they do. And then here comes Alice Walker with the message. The world rising can put an end to any violent thing. So where else do we see a great emergence? In the natural world. We talked about caterpillars into butterflies. Yes, and I am often thinking at this time of year about the bear emerging from her hibernation. So what does she do first thing when she emerges from her hibernation, when she shakes off the sleep of unknowing, when she ascends from the cave of isolation or desolation, or just the holding pattern of a dark season? The first thing she does is she forage and feed. She is really famished. She's hungry. In her hunger, she becomes risky. She finds herself close to civilization. She'll fight for her sustenance. She'll scramble and scrape in a harsh world until her hunger is satiated. And I would say that we are hungry too. Hungry for belonging. Hungry for spiritual food that connects us to a love greater than ourselves and to ourselves. Hungry for meaning after feeling isolated. Isolated in the caves of greed, capitalist competitiveness, keeping up with the Joneses, the economy bearing down on us, the illness or overwhelm of post-pandemic life, whatever has kept us in our own hibernation for a season. Disaster is my muse, says the graphic novelist Art Spiegelman, creator of the famous genre-making graphic novel Mouse. If disaster be our muse, well then today, that call is loud and clear. Amen? So what does Alice Walker tell us? Get up. Roll over on that part of you that will not welcome, will not recognize, encourage, or even see our rise. And we will have to fight and scrape and forage for every bit of freedom we thought we had already won. which means it wasn't clear enough the first time around. It wasn't freedom because it was not codified into a secure future for Black and brown Americans living in Louisiana for good. So, where are we seeing the signs of a great emergence? Where are we seeing ourselves at that 500-year hinge? There's a new wide-ranging study from the Hartford Institute for Religion Research that has revealed a new story taking shape. Since the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic, church membership has increased. And the rise in membership and participation has continued every year since 2020. And it is clear that since the 2024 election and the ascension of a mafia presidency, churches are gaining in membership. And then we've got the Chicago Pope. Yeah, interesting. It's like, what a world where the Unitarian minister is going to quote the Pope now. This Pope has adopted a framework of liberation theology and preferential option for the poor, and the Catholic Church now is starting to see an increase in returning and new members. People are starving now. They are hungry for moral leadership, for beauty in deed and word. They are hungry for meaning-making and remembering their core values and our core values of human interconnectedness, human dignity, and service to each other and the earth. And so they are looking back to the priests to satiate their hunger. In his recent publication, De Lexi Te, I'm not going to read the Latin, Pope Leo references biblical passages that point towards a Jesus who reflects from the viewpoint of the poor and the oppressed, committed to escaping their poverty and their oppression. He's quoting such passages as this one from Luke chapter 4. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor, to set the oppressed free. Pope Leo highlights a long lineage of Christian figures who embodied this vision, ending with referencing Bishop Oscar Romero, who is sort of known as the patron saint of liberation theology. At a moment when the revolutionary heart of the Judeo-Christian tradition has been domesticated by Christian nationalism, this work of the Pope, De Lexi Te, reawakens the church's original message: another way is possible. And another Christianity is possible. It is a faith that liberates rather than enslaves, that sides with the poor, the non-white, the oppressed, the immigrant, the refugee, and the imprisoned. It recalls Jesus, the worker and outsider, and the God who dwells among those who suffer. Could disaster be a muse for us? For Unitarian Universalists who are ready to join the world rising for our values of justice for all and for a peaceful world, our values of freedom of belief and honoring the worth and dignity of all people? Are we ready to shape a new narrative? This may be a time of great emergence as we come out of our caves of indifference, that isolation of materialism, and meet our own rising, forage for each other, for the belonging we feel when we have to scrape and struggle for the rights that we were starting to take for granted. It is difficult to hold on to the true narratives of our time, but just like when you are geocaching, there are treasures all around us, right under our noses. Now, I too will confess to you that I have fallen prey to the oppressive narrative of hopelessness. This is the narrative that Empire wants us to feel: hopeless. In DeKalb County, this past year, some of you may remember when the superintendent cut elementary school recess time from 30 minutes to 15 minutes per day. Now, this affected my household greatly, and it cast a shadow over the public education system in our region, shaping a narrative for the kids that school was primarily a tool for learning institutional power, how to respect authority, how to stand in line, to raise your hand to use the bathroom, and to sit still for hours and hours on end for 5-year-olds. This same superintendent who enacted this new policy of 15-minute recess had just recently been indicted for corruption and embezzlement. So what were kids learning about the role of authority, requiring their acquiescence? It did not make sense. I was distraught, and I spoke to a lot of parents who just shrugged back at me and said, there's probably nothing we can do, which is what they want. But I began to realize that our school board and other elected leaders are generally used to operating under the radar, with nearly empty town halls and spacious comment periods. Well, suddenly, parents filled the school board meetings. They organized, they made calls, they attended talkbacks and meetings. They rejected the harmful and unsubstantiated narrative that less recess equaled greater literacy. That's not true. As of January this year, the kids have their 30 minutes of recess again. And just as we started to celebrate that, then came the introduction of the School Assignment Project, SAP, another vestige of the corrupt former superintendent and the school board that promoted him. Now this plan, the School Assignment Project, has anyone in DeKalb County heard about this? This plan would close 27 schools, elementary and middle schools, across DeKalb County, merging smaller community schools into larger institutions across many neighborhoods. The school board insisted, well, we already have construction contracts with a company to build these big schools, so it was pretty much a done deal, they said. But they wanted to hear some input. And I heard parents repeat the exact same message as before, doing the construction company's work for them. There's nothing we can do, probably. But I also saw a lot of parents get organized, some of them for the very first time in their lives. They created t-shirts to save their schools, websites, they launched protests on street corners, they wrote scores of letters, attended the info sessions and the school board meetings. Parents in our elementary school, which has been on the chopping block, made beautiful videos highlighting what a school means to a neighborhood and how walking to school makes communities safer and how the entire community coalesces around its public school. And they got to share out about their school's specialness, our school's specialness, its values of welcome to kids with different needs, and its unique diversity representing the best of the neighborhood. And you know what? Just 3 days ago, the school board pressed pause on the entire school assignment plan. So the community won this round, and now we know what it feels like to advocate and to win. We understand ourselves to be advocates for our community public schools. We can't just take it for granted anymore, and friends, that is good news. If disaster be a muse, then we are artists of uprising. Do you see the little treasures right underneath our noses? They are pockets of resistance, days of massive protests, unlike we have seen in many years. These treasures are immigration lawyers and civil rights lawyers, and even congressional moments where checks and balances continue to hold. They are you, the resistance that sings. They are you, the ones who drive young adults who do not have citizenship documents to Freedom University on Saturdays to get their education. These treasures, they are all around us. So which story are you going to amplify? The story that all is lost? That democracy, that we are relegated to watch the death of democracy and the death of congregations and communalism and community? No. Tell the true story, the story of our great emergence, the liberation efforts that are taking shape everywhere, the culture that is becoming a culture of resistance, and that resistance is growing, that the world is rising. Share the good news that we are rising. Please rise.